Hello, Cut Cardstock fans, and hello, a little more crafty followers. This is Mo Crafty, and I have a project for you today that is going to launch you straight into fall. We are doing sunflower accents, and we are doing it with the fabulous Cut Cardstock paper. So thanks for joining us today. I am going to assemble some basic supplies, and we're going to make a basic paper flower. So what I am using is the Cut Cardstock yellow Astro Bright solar yellow paper, along with the Cut Cardstock vanilla bean brown, and I have cut several shapes in a heart along with a base circle shape. Now I am specifically not stating the sizes because this truly can work with any size, large or small. So it really just depends on what die cuts you have at home, or if you want to hand cut these into heart shapes and circles. So as you can see here, I'm also applying some twine onto the base of my circle that I have cut. This is if I am going to be hanging my accent sunflower up, or going to be using this as an accentuated trim. So I'm just taking some glue and just putting some little loops in the bottom. These are actually for decoration. I do make another one later on that I will show you that actually has a longer loop that you can hang the flower. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is actually make some creases in at least your base flowers. And I do that with just a fold line at the bottom. You can also just hand fold those as well, but I used a bone folder or a scoring folder. And then you're going to take your hearts and you're going to adhere them to the outside of your circle after bending them in slightly. And I lay these out first so I know approximately how many hearts need to go around the circle. It depends on the size of your circle, of course. And you just keep cutting hearts until you need them. And then just adhere them with a glue. Now, I am in this project using a wet glue. It is not always feasible to use a wet glue, but this glue that I am using is actually really friendly. But if you are going to use a wet glue, then I do recommend having some clothespins nearby so that you can hold your project together until it dries. Your other option is to use a hot glue gun, which works really well, except for the fact that you do want to make sure you have a low temperature hot glue gun if you do so when you're working with paper. So what I did is adhere the hearts to the base in just a base circle first. We're going to have about 2 to 3 layers depending on the size of the flower. And then I set that aside to dry and I glued it straight over the twine. And then we're starting with the second layer of hearts. Now you'll notice with this layer of hearts, I need a little more dimension. So what I'm doing is trimming just about a 1/4 inch up on the heart itself where the two tops lie, and then folding it in on itself just like that. Now with the wet glue, again, I'm needing a clothespin to hold it together. If you do so with a wet glue, make sure you move the clothespin regularly. Don't leave it there for very long, just long enough for it to start to adhere, and then make sure you take them off. So that way you don't get any sort of bumps or creases in your leaves. See how I'm shifting these around a little bit? And then once you feel like they're sticking, go ahead and take the clothespins off and just let them dry thoroughly. Okay, so that was the second layer. That's how you make the leaf. Just trimming in and then folding it over on itself. And then I'm going to adhere the bottom of these with some glue around the circle, same as I did before with the base layer. And this one just sticks up just a little bit. Now, if you're having trouble with these sticking as well, you can go ahead and lay something heavy on top of them until they dry. But these stuck really well for me, so I didn't have to move them around. And I am putting these or laying these in between the first layer so that I've got some dimension going on as well. Okay, that took about 5 or 6 petals. Now while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and make the middle of my sunflower. Now this is a strip of the vanilla bean brown that is cut at 2 inches wide by 11 inches long, and I am just gently folding it over, trying not to make a full-blown crease out of it, and then stapling it widthwise in certain spots all the way down the strip so that I've got kind of a loop going, if you will. And it doesn't matter if you actually get a crease line, it's not going to hurt much. And then I'm taking a scissors and I'm starting to trim at like about a 1/4 inch all the way down so that I've got a little fringe going on. This is going to become the middle of my sunflower. and these will make little loops or little seeds that stick out of the sunflower as well. So just trim all the way down. Don't worry about the staple. The staple will not show when you are putting it into the project. And I've got this all trimmed down, and now I'm going to start rolling it. And so this will become the middle as I roll it up. There may be a need for you to put some adhesive on certain points down just to make sure it stays. So I'm just using just a little bit of adhesive to get it to stick. Eventually I will glue this down, but this keeps it from rolling open. So a little adhesive all the way down, and then we'll get this glued into the middle. Now this particular flower, I did 2 layers. There are times where your flowers are going to be big enough you might need 3 or 4 layers of petals, so it just depends on the size of sunflower you're making. If you're making a big sunflower, what you're going to do with this middle is actually make a second or third strip and just start to add it onto the outside. Okay, once they are adhered, then just start to fringe it out a little bit. Maybe give it some more glue just for security, and then let that dry. Okay, I've let everything dry thoroughly, and now I only need 1 middle for the size that I'm going to be needing. I'm going to add some glue to the middle of my flower, and then I'm going to stick the middle down in it, and then that is going to dry thoroughly as well. And then once it's dry, you can also fringe out the pieces that you need to get it to stay. Okay, so that has dried pretty well, and so now what I'm going to do is, I think with this one, instead of adding a 3rd layer of petals, and I'm just kind of showing you where you could do that if you wanted to, I actually want to cover some of the staples that are in view right now, so I am going to take some twine and wrap it around the base of that middle part. Now I didn't do that with my second flower because my fringe came out a little bit more, but for this one I wanted it to have just a little bit more dimension, and so I took just a tiny thin layer of twine and wrapped it around the middle, gluing it in spots and then letting that dry. And it gives a real rustic feel to the flower. So finish that up here, and we're going to let that dry. And we're almost done here. Wrap that around. Now you can see how the petals are staggered, as I mentioned before. Shift them around until you need them. Also, a good tip is to lay one leaf over the other in the same pattern. So I went right over left as I laid these petals down. Okay, these are dry now. Now that's up to you whether you want to add some more dimension with a sponge, but I am adding some distress ink to the ends of the petals, which gives it some color. You can do this in a brown or an orange distress ink if you want. And then we're going to add some like flecks of paint to make this look a little bit sprayed and a little more authentic. So I am adding some white acrylic paint and just sort of spraying that on with a toothbrush, and then coming back and I'm going to use the black. And this actually just gives it not such a stark look, but a little more of dimension and depth to the flower itself. So you can choose to do this with a spray brush too if you have, or a spray bottle, but I just happen to like using a toothbrush because I think it's very convenient. And there you go. Now these can be added as a bow or a hanger or even a garland if you wish. I actually use one as a wine tag, as you'll see here in a moment, but I certainly hope you'll give this project a try. Happy fall, happy autumn. Thanks for joining me.